at the most basic level, this is why we want courage. I think there's a deeper reason, though. And I'm a huge fan, follower, student of Bobby's, one of his lead policy advisors, Charles Eisenstein. So I'm sure a lot of you know of Charles, and if not, I highly recommend you following his work as well. I've read many of his books, and you know, his kind of core thesis in one of his early books is that there's a more beautiful world that all of us know in our hearts is possible. And that when each of us wake up in the morning and we spend our day living from that belief and from our heart and taking action in service of that, that in a way that's not always measurable and not always obvious, we're actually contributing to that more beautiful world. And not only that, because everybody think, oh, yeah, everybody do your part. But not only that, the real radical stance that I believe that he takes, my reading and understanding, is that's actually the highest contribution to that more beautiful world that we can make, is our choice to live from and act from that place. And so, in my opinion, the reason for us to have courage in the context of supporting this campaign is not so that Bobby can win, paradoxically. For me, the highest purpose of my courage in supporting this campaign is to be an expression of the possibility that I see in the campaign. Because whether or not he wins, am I doing my best to add to that? You know, there's that idea that like we should support the candidate that's most likely to protect us from the thing we fear the most. And a lot of people in this country right now are voting that way. They're not voting for what they would love. They're not voting for their ideal. They're voting for that thing that they think that can protect them from what they're scared of. And in my opinion, as long as you vote from fear, you're entrenching the whole structure that creates that. You're also teaching yourself that you are a person that does things from fear to protect yourself. You don't have the time, you don't have the patience, you don't have the courage to be an expression of your ideal. You can't stand for that because you don't have the time, it's too dangerous. One of those things. And so you teach yourself that you are that, and then you become one more person in the world, in the nation, that's an expression of we must live from fear, we must act from fear to protect ourselves. And then what have we got? We've got a population of people that are being that. And that's what a culture is. A culture is a collection of individuals that are being something. And so for me, the best reason to have courage in support of this campaign is so that I am expressing myself in a way that's an expression of what I see in the campaign and what I see in Bobby. You know, there was one way of looking at former political candidates sometimes where that candidate isn't necessarily the problem, but they are a symptom of a cultural problem. That candidate emerges in that way. And the way I think about Robert Kennedy is that he is a symptom of the consciousness and the courage and the light that is emerging in our culture as a response to a lot of fear. And so, yes, I believe in Bobby as a person, as an individual, as a personality, as a character, that he can hold that energy. But here's the thing that really stood out with me through a conversation I had recently with Charles, is because Charles is articulating to me not only his concern for what is the path to victory in the White House, but what does Bobby become based on what path to victory he chooses, right? And so there's a reality, there's multiple paths. And the path that a person chooses to victory determines who they get to be, who they are when they get there, when they're in the White House. How did you get there? Because that's going to make you. We teach ourselves who we are through our actions, which is exactly what I'm saying around the reason to have courage, is because if we can continue to cultivate a culture within us that is coming from love and is speaking for and acting for our ideal, then that body gets bigger, and whatever the symptom of that is, the avatar, the pinpointed projection, the one personality that sits at the top of that ends up in that place of office, then we did that. So we didn't put him in office because we convinced people. We put him in office because we convinced ourselves to have the courage to be that thing that we see out there. So this is super essential for me in my life and my philosophy. It's like, I mean, it's kind of not mine. Gandhi kind of did it, like be the change you wish to see in the world. But like, it's more of a, I'm just making it really practical. And in fact, one of the questions that I like to use in conversation is, who would Bobby be in this moment? Not because he's the perfect person. I'm not on the same page with everything, especially policy stuff. It's not about that. It's that when we are supporting this candidate because we believe that there's a consciousness, there's an authenticity, there's a real commitment to the America that has been lost and that we want to bring back, we're projecting something that in our hearts we know is true, and we're putting it out there on that person, and we're seeing that possibility. And so we can use that. You know, people talk about projecting their fear onto other people. Judgment of that person. Oh my gosh, that's just, I'm judging myself. I say admiration is projection too. The admiration is a projection of our own capacity, those things we value. And so if that's the case, we can utilize that projection as a way into who we are and what we care about. We can ask ourselves, well, you know, when somebody comes up to the table at the farmer's market and they're like, what do you think you guys doing here? You're just going to put that person back in office if you're here, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to deal with this. No, actually you do. You do. And that's why you're following Robert Kennedy, because when you see him face something like that, how he handles it inspires you. And it inspires you because inside you, you know that there's a way to be in that conversation that is coming from love, that's not getting stuck in this judgment cycle and this divisiveness and this back and forth and saying, oh yeah, you know, back in my day, I'd take him out back and I'd show him who's boss. It's like, what kind of leadership is that? And so when we are thinking that we don't know who to be or what to do, we can use this leader, this archetype, this person named Robert Kennedy as a way into our own resource. And we can ask ourselves, well, who would Bobby be in this moment? And that's one of the things that I'll do when we enter in conversation. If some of you want to volunteer, it's a great way to find, actually, it's not really about him, it's about you, to find that part of you that knows what to do. And so how do we create courage? I want to share the concept. And what I would actually love to do is to be in conversation with some of you today, for those that would like that. I just invite you to volunteer when it's time. So just have that in your mind. We're going to come to it in a little bit. But how do you create courage? You know, if courage is like being connected to love in your heart and having your heart ablaze with something that you really are passionate about, that you care about, that you value, you know, then you want to have love alive in your heart instead of fear in your belly, to have that courage to move forward, to contribute. So how do you do that? Well, there's a number of ways. I'll share two of the ones that are most important for me. The first is, you know, the heart comes alive when we shift our focus from ourself to others. It's really hard to be connected to courage for oneself, but it's really easy to be connected to courage for other people. And so when you're in a situation in which maybe the conversation is getting heated and you find yourself kind of holding back or uncomfortable, like, my treaty, my belief, my perspective is that discomfort, that fear, that worry, that concern is only alive and active because you're self-referential in that moment. You've allowed the context of this conversation to have you be more worried about yourself than you are concerned with the things that would be possible if you were to stay on this path. And so in those moments, just a real simple trick, I guess you could say, that I came up with when I used to do public talks, and if I start to get nervous, I'd realize, oh my gosh, the reason I'm nervous right now is because even though I'm on the stage and there's 100 people in the room or whatever, I've become more concerned with how I feel and how I look to them than helping them. Wow. Huh. Okay, so then here's the question. The trick is, am I willing, at least for this next 30 minutes that I'm on this stage, to be here only for them? No matter what they think of me, am I willing to just be here in service of these people? And the same thing I do in a one-to-one conversation. Right now, this person's come over, I've got my Kennedy hat on, we're having a conversation, they're really heated, and I'm starting to feel defensive, like it's triggering my warrior blood. And then it's like, okay, am I willing, at least for this, to let go of everything else except being here for this person? Am I willing to just, you know, forget about that? Forget about that. It's not about Bobby winning right now. It's about us. And why would I make that primary? Why would I move from trying to convince them to vote for Kennedy to making what's primary this staying connected to this human being? Because that's the highest value that for me is at the central of this campaign, like a genuine expression of a commitment to unity. And so instead of trying to convince them through non-unity to vote for somebody who's going to be and create unity, I want to be that here and now. And so I make this secondary, and I say, you know what matters more than anything is our connection. And the moment I say that, my fear goes away, because I'm not trying to protect and defend even this. So that's the first way, is a shift of attention from self to other, or from self to something other than self, greater than you or the person in front of you. The person in front of you is usually the easiest way. But let's talk about another way that you can practice even when there's not somebody you're in conversation with. So if courage is when your heart has love in it, then having love in your heart is the thing. And so how do you get love into your heart? I don't actually think about love as something that you pump up or that you kind of do something to get. I actually experience love as that which happens when we remove that which we are afraid of. Okay. And so what does that mean? That means that, like, if I don't have the courage to put a sign in my front yard, which I didn't at first when I first got it, because I'd never done that before. It's like, are people going to throw stuff at my house or what? I was like, I wasn't even that present with what the concern was. When I didn't have the courage to do that, when I was afraid of doing that, what I did was get really clear on what it was that I was afraid of. And so for that, it was as simple as like sitting down, it's like, and just writing in my journal, I'm afraid that if I put a sign in my yard, then, and then it's like, let that belly speak to me. Let me see what I'm afraid of. And actually, just by bringing it from the belly into the light of awareness, suddenly it's like, okay, I can be with that. I'm okay. And I relax. And the moment I relax, because I'm not afraid anymore, my heart starts to automatically feel love. Because that thing that I care about, that I was afraid I couldn't serve, is still there when I remove the fear. And then I'm just left with that thing which I care about, and I'm not afraid anymore. And suddenly I have the courage to go and do that thing. Sometimes it's as simple as that. So the structure of what I'm saying is, well, the way to create courage is to have love in your heart. And the way to have love in your heart is to remove fear from your belly, from your body in a moment. And the way to do that is to become conscious of that fear, to be able to be aware of what you're actually afraid of. And another great way to do that is in conversation with other people. Another really great way to do that is to do it in conversation with other people who are supporting the campaign. And why is that? Again, to reference my conversation with Charles, we were talking about the reality of the fear of supporting Bobby Kennedy. Because the reality is there's a real risk. I mean, there's risks, all sorts of risks, a whole continuum of risks, you know. But at least at the most basic level, there's the risk of, as Charles used the word, of being unacceptable. Unacceptable for just simply supporting a third-party candidate in such a divisive political climate. How fucking dare you, pardon my French, but how dare you put us at danger by choosing something outside of the status quo two options? And you know, I'm sure everybody here has experienced that already to some degree. And so, but that's to pretend that you're not afraid of that will block your courage, right? It's important for me that none of us spiritually bypass by being like, oh, I'm not afraid. I don't need any courage. I'm not afraid. It's like, everybody's got their edge. Everybody's got their edge. And there's more power that you have to make an impact in supporting this campaign if you're willing, if and when you're willing to acknowledge it, look at it, voice it, let it dissolve, and find even more freedom to have even more impact through the love that you experience. And so, again, the conversation with Charles, the idea of the fear of being unacceptable. And I was like, so what do you do? You know, and he's like, you create spaces where you are acceptable. And he said, and it's like people will sometimes underestimate the importance and the value of coming together as members of the campaign and just chatting amongst themselves. They say, oh, it's just preaching to the choir. And his point was like, no, it's not. It's actually one of the most important things you can do is to cultivate community between you and other people who support this candidacy, who support Bobby for president. Because through that conversation, through the communing, through the connection, you create a sovereignty, you create a sense of belonging and acceptability that will be a source of the courage that you have when you're out there in the conversation with the people that may or may not see you as unacceptable. Having a place where you're accepted for being unacceptable is an important way of creating courage. And so I'm blending that context, that practice of communing with supporters of the campaign, be it on these Zoom calls, be it locally, all of the above. I'm blending that in with this practice of getting really honest with ourselves about what it is that we're afraid of. What's the risk? And it doesn't matter if it sounds like it's over the top, like, I'm afraid that I'm going to be assassinated. It's like, if you think it's exaggeration and you shouldn't be afraid of that because it sounds crazy, don't let that be a reason not to speak it, not to acknowledge it, because then you're stuffing it down and it's still in your belly and it's still blocking your heart. And so what I love to do, if you guys want to start dropping in the chat as I continue to share here before we dive into some conversation, is like, what are you afraid of? What is an edge for you? What's scary for you? I don't care how silly it sounds, how irrational it is, how small or how big it is. What are you afraid of? And my promise to you, my commitment to you is that starting to get comfortable giving voice to this is going to start to have you be more free from this. And it's going to actually be the removal of the fear that makes way for the natural courage to emerge. And that you'll find yourself with more love in your heart and more ability and power to express and make an impact. So rejection, yeah. I mean, we're all afraid of that. Rejection of what? Like, here's one of the things that I do with fear too that helps me to get free of it is I call it following the rabbit. So there's two things. There's getting really, really specific in certain circumstances and allowing my imagination to play out and give it voice. Well, I'm afraid of being rejected by this person in this situation. Like, I'm afraid that somebody's going to throw something at I just got 2 new cars. We got rid of 1 car. We got 2 cars because we had a 1-car family. And it's like, I haven't put a sticker on yet. And I'm just being honest right now. Like, I'm afraid that somebody's going to F my new car up. Like, I just got my car. At least if it's my sign and it's like, it'd be a long toss to like hit a window or something like that. But my car, I'm afraid of that. Okay. What else? What else am I afraid of? I'm specifically afraid to bring up politics with my mom because I love my mom and I don't like seeing her get worked up and agitated. I don't want to make her uncomfortable. So I'm always trying to like thread the needle and find this place where I can talk about this thing that's important to me and that I believe in with somebody who's close to me, but also not wanting to upset them. In my business, I have a company where I teach these kinds of ideas and I help people to create what they love in their life and their communities. And not everybody's has the same political stance or opinion as me. So I have fear to bring it up and I've done it, but it's like, I'm always trying to thread the needle and dance. And so I'm trying to find my way with it. And so I'm sharing these things for a couple of reasons. Number one, because I don't want to come here and be like, hey, I'm not afraid because I've done this work and now it's your turn. No, it's like wax the car, paint the fence. This is forever practice. And I'm always interested in leaning into that edge. But I can tell you right now in my stomach, I feel lighter already just giving voice to that with you here, being witnessed by you, seeing some of you nod and smile. Yeah, you won't put a sticker on your car either. Like whatever I'm imagining, I'm feeling better and lighter and having more courage already. So some people have shared some things in the chat. Let's read through them again, I guess, right here. Hold on a sec. We have fear of rejection. Oh, there was the other thing I was going to say. Driving my car at night with a bumper sticker. Yeah, you can relate. And being attacked. Yes, I've been afraid of vandalism to my car. Also stickers, people prejudging my character when they see my car sticker, a post, a house sign, whatever. Afraid to pursue an actual conversation with my son in New York who said he can't talk to me about politics. Yeah, it's tough when we can't go somewhere in conversation with the people close to us. So not feeling educated or articulate enough to talk to people about the issues and Bobby's positions. Yeah, I can relate to that one as well. I'll just share, it's a little bit of an aside, but just a perspective that I've taken on that. When I first started telling some friends that I was supporting Robert Kennedy, one of my friends said, "What? Are you crazy? I can't believe that." I was like, "Why, man?" He's like, "Because he doesn't have any experience. He has no like experience in politics and leadership." And I was like, at that point, I didn't even know that much about like his legal experience. And I was like, wow, what's so interesting about that is I didn't even know that. And what's interesting about me not knowing that is I didn't know that because I didn't care. And why didn't I care? Because I was supporting this candidacy for a different reason than their experience in politics or their background. And so I try to like instead of thinking like I'm wrong for not being able to have that intellectual debate about Gaza because I don't have the history, it's like, okay, well, why am I a yes to this despite not knowing that? Because there's something in my heart that says that this is enough and this is right for me. And am I going to start then fearing that like, oh, well, you can't just make decisions about your life because but in your heart, it feels like the right thing. Well, why not? Why not? And more importantly, what world would we have if that were true, that you can't make decisions from that place? You have to make it from up here and you have to just argue it and get to the thing and be trying to balance the scales and all this stuff. What world would we have? Maybe we'd have the one that we have. And maybe the fact, I'm going to go back to read what you wrote. Not feeling educated and articulate enough. Maybe the fact that I'm supporting this candidate without being educated, articulate enough is the point. Maybe that is the point, because this barrage of the ideology that you must be educated and articulate to make decisions that are right for this world, that's a violent idea, because that counts out so many people. That maybe there's something more beautiful in what your heart knows without being able to speak like Charles and Bobby do, or like any other person that we see on TV. So I'm going to keep reading these. These are awesome. Not feeling, okay, I got that one. It feels like we are embarrassing our kids. My fear is that the CIA killing Bobby like they did with the JFK. Just kidding. I mean, like, I don't know about just kidding. I mean, Bobby has acknowledged, like, he knows that he's putting his life on the line, right? It's not like it's a coincidence that 2 Kennedys were assassinated. And I think important to that, to really acknowledge on an archetypal level, that anybody who supports the campaign of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is supporting an archetypal energy that has faced and met assassination, literal sacrifice, right? Like, that lives in the name. And for you to pretend that's not the case is a way of hiding from your own fear. Like, some of that energy that has brought assassination to the Kennedy name is alive in this today. Now, I hope it doesn't come to that. We all hope it doesn't come to that. Bobby's open to it coming to that. And I think that because he's open to it coming to that and willing to acknowledge it and move forward anyway, that we need to be open to assassination on a metaphorical level, or whatever that means for us, the assassination of our character. And if we're not, then it's like, well, I'm trying to like skate by and not look at it, while the person that I'm inspired by is meeting it head on. Is saying, yep, that might happen. And this is more important to me than that. So I do think that it's a legit thing to acknowledge. I don't need talking about and adding energy to that conversation, but to avoid it as if it's not a thing, I think is equally destructive, I would say. So thank you for bringing it up, even if it was a bit in jest. I like this, that there's some truth in it also. My fear is mostly about not being able to explain my position clearly when in the moment. I totally get it. I forget what the evidence I have for my position. Thank you again for saying this. Like, this is why I brought up that example. This presupposition, this assumption that you have to have a logical argument and be able to argue the evidence to hold that position, is a lie that tricks people into not trusting their heart as a reason to act and to stand for something. And if there's anything that I can give people the courage to do, is the courage to speak from your heart without evidence, without an argument. That's what's missing. That's what's missing. This, like, it feels true. I'm inspired, but I can't make a rational argument, so I'm just going to sit down. No, that's not courage. Courage is not a rational argument. Courage is your heart being alive with something. And if you can be articulate enough to articulate that not articulating the evidence doesn't mean that you can't believe in this and stand for this, if you can just articulate that, then in my opinion, you're making a stand for something more beautiful, something greater. And I see that in Bobby when he's in debate, because he's not as committed to his position as he is to being that unity. I mean, I forget which network it was on. Maybe you remember, Susan, but like, it was one of the major networks, and he was in a debate with, was it Ari something? And it got quite heated, but there was a commitment to respect, and there was a capacity for them to both distinguish their respect of each other despite this fiery energy. And that's what this nation needs, not 2 bullies, bouting it out. So I'd love to be in conversation with some of you, and the conversation will go something like, what are you afraid of? And us just talking about that. And I'll just demonstrate how I work with myself, how I work with people, to get really clear on the fear, such that it starts to just melt, and that there's love, and then there's courage that's born automatically. And then, yeah, let's just see how that goes. So is there somebody that'd like to volunteer? I don't know if somebody's raising their hand or something. You can raise your hand. I see Lisa, I think that was. Can you take them off mute, Susan? Okay. Or ask? Oh yeah, here we go. Hear me? Cool. Loud and clear. Nice to meet you.
Okay. Yeah. So I first, I just want to say, I am so excited to hear someone articulate what I have been feeling. We happened to just get a couple months ago, realizing that Bobby Kennedy was running. And we had quit listening to the news. We had quit listening to everything. It just made my stomach hurt. I couldn't even listen to any news. I had just
Mm.
kind of given up, and I wasn't going to vote for anyone for the first time in my life. I
Mm.
was just hopeless. And what I felt was hope. He articulated everything that in my heart I felt wasn't even possible anymore, that it
Mhm.
wasn't even possible to see the world that he was articulating. And
Mhm.
I just think that that hope is what helps me to overcome my fear
Yeah.
and have the courage. And then I know this is going to probably sound weird, but I had a dream. And in
Mm.
the dream, I heard the words, war is easy. Just surrender to your fear. Peace.
Mhm.
Now that takes courage. It takes
Mhm.
courage to have peace, to speak peace, to put peace first, to not say, I'm going to, the ends justify the means, or give in to
Mhm.
that fear and hate. And, you know, I mean, the reality is what overcomes fear? You're right, love. A
Mm.
parent will run into a burning building to save a child. That's what it takes
Yeah.
to overcome fear, is you love something
Mhm.
and feel that there's the possibility. And you're right about this connection. Just if, even if he doesn't get in, just realizing that there are other people, that I'm not isolated and alone, that there are more people that believe this, because that makes me feel like it's possible to change the world. You know,
Mm.
change can go, can happen slowly, and then suddenly, like the fall of the USSR,
Mhm.
it builds, and there's that tipping point. But
Exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
even with that, you know, we debated whether we were going to put a sticker on our car, and our car
Mhm.
isn't even new. But you know,
And we did.
but
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there is still that, you know, we've gone through the COVID, we didn't do a lot of the things, and there's been lots of changes in our lives where we've had to confront fear and lose friends and be canceled. And the fear of that happening again has been real. You know, you think you kind of get used to it. It's just like, well, my world's getting very small.
Mm.
But
Mm.
yet in a lot of ways, recognizing what I really stand for opens up my heart, and
Mhm.
I know who I am more, and to feel like there's some people that feel that way. Feel I don't feel alone, and that
Mm.
alone just makes me feel like I, whether people agree, make sure that everyone has the chance to, we can
Mhm.
disagree agreeably. That Bobby's pain of how he does it, you know, like these
Mhm.
kinds of meetings. This is amazing. This you just don't
Mm.
hear. I thought this was gone forever. The fact
Mm.
that people could come together and to de-escalate and to find
Mhm.
peaceful ways, that we love peace more than we hate war. That is exactly, I don't even care about all the policies as much as the way we solve the problems, the
Yeah.
civility, rebuilding. That has been essential, you know, for me. And it just, like I said, it gives me hope. And you help strengthen that hope. It helps me to,
Mm.
hearing you talk, it
Mm.
helps me feel empowered. And I just really, I mean, I cannot even tell how much that means. You know,
Mm.
this has been about hope and
Yes.
restoring of hope that I had felt hopeless for so
Mm.
long. So that's why I'm here. I don't even know what to
Yeah.
do. First time really being, but I feel inspired so much that I feel like I have to do something. And
Well, you're doing it right now. I just want to just reflect that back to you. I'm glad that what I've shared has given you hope, but listening to you is doing that for me. And so it's this reciprocation of sharing what we're afraid of, and the courage that we've connected with and the hope we've connected with to allow us to continue and to move forward and to support. Like I've given it to you and you've given it back to me, and now I feel more encouraged. And so this is the point. I mean, you're doing it, we're doing it. And like that's what Charles is really weighing on. And I really agree with him that like there's no end to the value of this. And if we continue to come together and support and encourage each other and have each other feel like we're not crazy and this is the right thing, then that body grows, and that is the tide that rises the ship we call Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and that puts him in the White House. Importantly, and that being the path that has him be the leader that he is right now when he's there, right? And so I really believe that what you're doing, what I'm doing, what we're all doing is determining not just whether or not he wins, but who he is that wins when he wins, right? And so we're actually creating him little by little, by supporting him in the way that we are. So thank you so much for your contribution to me and to us. I mean, and so actually that's a great, it doesn't have to be speak up so I can coach you or support you in not being afraid. You sharing courage that you have and fear that you've overcome is an equal contribution here. So I'd like to invite anybody to actually just have the space to speak in this environment, in this context of fear and courage. I would love that. Please volunteer. I was hoping you'd put your hand up, Cindy. Can't wait
I'll
to hear.
happily volunteer after space. Thank you, JP, and everyone. This moment right now, I'm breathing into my body and relaxing my pelvic floor and letting my belly be soft and relaxing my jaw, because the amount of energy flowing through on this, the solstice, which is a really powerful moment, and the full moon tomorrow in Capricorn, which is Bobby's sign, followed next month by the full moon in Capricorn, and you too, Capricorn. The cosmic alignment to support us right now in letting go of that delusion of separateness, and then enjoying the fruits of the seeming separateness, because there's a you guys and there's a me, and you're in Oahu and I'm in New Jersey and you're all over the country, and that's the joy of it. And what I've had to sacrifice, which comes from the Latin to make holy, which I really love that. What I've had to make holy is the stand on the truth within. Like, how is it that I want to contribute to this world, to have a living legacy, and then a legacy once I'm complete this lifetime, has required me to be able to receive a lot of vitriol and ostracization, including 3 of my 4 children. 2 are now, speaking to me, but 1 has decided never to speak to me again because of the Bobby Kennedy thing, and has cut me off. Now, there's also addiction and mental health issues involved in this. And what it does for me is it hurts my heart, but what the best I can feel is like I'm Liam Neeson in a Taken movie, kind of with my kids. It's like, whatever has happened, that these children have had the lives that they've had, which is like, the so-called best private schools, where they were then taught what to think rather than how to think, with a great fear of not belonging to a narrative that would not make them feel good and like they were doing something wonderful, and to diminish that ability to have conversation. When I was a lawyer a long time ago, my law review comment was on the First Amendment. I understand, like at a visceral level, how important it is to have a disagreement. I love that your dad's on and that your mom has another opinion than all of the both of you. I mean, that is the foundation of a free society, being able to have discourse about differences of opinion. But what I had to accept is that, and this, I didn't get the mRNA shot. That was the first shot heard around the world, because I was told by my kids that it was racist not to get that. And they could no longer tolerate the kind of white privilege racism that I had. And the only way to make people of my generation change is to make us suffer and cut us out. This is what's being taught at, like, private schools. And Mickey Willis's movie, The Great Awakening, helped me see how my children have been indoctrinated to not even be able to have a conversation and think, in order to be good, they have to follow this and then cut out the mother principle, which is the totalitarian handbook, if you've read The Psychology of Totalitarianism. So what that takes as a mom, as 4 children, and that I can still feel in the cells in my body, is that might be the case, that I don't talk to my one son again, or the others. It is moving along. My youngest just moved to LA and happened to move right across from the Robert F. Kennedy schools, which is where, like, his dad was assassinated. And I'm like, yeah, the resistance is futile, love. I mean, it's whether you vote for him or not, like, he exists and he's not the Antichrist. But I say personally, just coming back to, I deal with the grief in my bones of having made decisions that I know that are best for me and best for a foundation of a free country, that have caused my children, I think, sickness and then ostracization from me. And I'm just taking a longer view of it all. I'm taking lifetime's view of it all. What would happen if I kowtowed, if I didn't stay true to myself? That would be betraying truly what I would want for my kids. Yes. And I asked Bobby this question recently at an event. He and I had a private conversation about what it is to be in this campaign proper, a volunteer for the campaign or awakening, and have the vitriol and viciousness and, the separation and the disharmony come your way. And we had made a prayer for everyone. When Bobby's gone through the valley of the shadow of death so many times, you kind of like, you keep going forward. And then in the greater group, I asked the question, and the answer he gave about how to handle this, so I'll share this with you, because it was the direct question I asked. What guidance can you give and encouragement can you give for those of us that might not have the experience you have? And by the way, 12 steps for 42 years. I mean, that's like a handbook for how to remain in serenity. I'm in Al-Anon now 8 years. Like, my serenity is 100% my responsibility. I might still have feelings, but my serenity is my responsibility. And he told a story, which I'm sure many of you've heard before, about what it was growing up in his household with his dad, and how there was a topic to be presented at dinner, and there were books about it, and they were to then debate it at dinner, like have differing opinions and then come together as a family in the end, like the art of debate. And he said, my dad taught us and lived by the principles of Stoicism. And Stoicism, I used to think, was like, thank you, ma'am, may I have another? Like the ability to take a beating and not flinch. That's not really truly what Stoicism is, although a Stoic might be able to do that. Stoicism is a rich body of wisdom, but Bobby said that he lives by those principles. And I know Stoicism to be, in the Cindy definition, is the ability to have mastery over your emotions, to be able to feel a feeling and to stay in your presence so that the emotion doesn't take over the reason and the soul of you, that it's just part of you. And you see when they say these outrageous things to Bobby, he has this like stone face on him. It's like, it's a stoic face. It's just like he remains in his presence, and he would guide us to learn about Stoicism in its truest form and to learn to be in mastery with our feelings, not to numb them or succumb to them.
Right.
And then the last thing he said, and which I will share with you, he said, and in the end, what it is learning to live without fear and living from faith. So I'll share that with you all. And that, to me, and in one of the spiritual lineages, which I'm a practitioner of, courage is always linked with two other attributes. So I'll share this with you now: courage, optimism, and a spirit of discovery. If you want to awaken to the truth of what we are and to be an agent for that, you need courage, optimism, and a spirit of discovery. I told you this, JP, and I'll share. I walked into a Trump superstore recently with my Bobby Kennedy buttons on, and it's a store that's been in business for since Donald Trump was running the first time, and I've driven by 10,000 times. And I was so inspired a couple of weeks ago to walk in and talk to the people there. And at first I was met with, get thee back kind of energy. But what I said was, no matter who becomes president of the United States, you and I live in the same county. And I believe we can build harmony together. And I believe that you want healthy children and great schools and prosperity for your family and a clean environment and the ability to have harmony within. I believe that that's a common interest, and in self-responsibility for being residents of this county. I want to say that you matter to me. And how you feel matters to me, and you thriving matters to me. And then a lot of people came in, and it was outrageous at first, but at the end, it was God bless you. Everyone was coming out. Like I say, and I say this to Bobby too, like it's not about Bobby, but it includes Bobby. He's not the savior, but he has a post that he's inhabiting, just like all of us in the oneness. And everything you shared in the beginning, JP, is so true about the energy. The means are not the ends don't justify the means are the ends.
Yes.
And I believe the universe wants to delight me, in a two-term Robert F. Kennedy Jr. presidency would certainly delight me. And that's, where I'm using my imagination, which I believe is a steering wheel for our force. And, I'd see Bobby in his 90s content, healthy, and happy. And Bobby won't be content if the world hasn't transformed. How that happens, we will see. But to be what you're bringing, this courageous conversations for every one of you on this meeting, I feel the power of it in this moment. And I'm just like, you're just so right. These are the people that I'm meeting. I've met thousands of people that are the most extraordinary souls, like you guys. And even how I come to be on this conversation tonight is somewhat miraculous to me.
Yeah.
And so that's what I wanted to share my experience. So what really I deal with a kind of grief and an ache in my being, and how I keep moving forward is, and the principles of Stoicism and many different principles are just like knowing how to really act on the truth within you. And that's what I'm doing. And if the cost is, I talk to one of my children or more of them, because I went to a Bobby Kennedy luncheon and she didn't talk to me for 4 months. It's just like, I'm like, baby girl, like what happened? that's what it will be. And that at least I will model for this lifetime or another in the energetic soup for everyone and my kids, that there is a way that we don't have to annihilate or cut each other out to build that more beautiful world we all know is possible. And so I might cry on my deathbed, but that's okay. That happens sometimes. So thank you. I've spoken a lot. I'm very
That was
grateful.
lovely. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much. Betsy Allen, hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for all that you said. It's beautiful the way you put it together. And I want to add something in terms of dealing with courage and dealing
Yes.
with fear, which is clearing out the old stuff that's also an obstacle. So I'm afraid of being a lightning rod for being afraid of being a lightning rod like I was by choosing to be unvaccinated. And then to feel the sadness of that, to feel the terror of that, to feel all of that and digest it and look even farther back to where else did that happen that it became so traumatic for me. So what you described was important for me, and it's exactly the
Yes.
process I've been doing, which has
Yeah.
been miraculous. And I did finally put the bumper sticker on. It's so interesting because I've been wearing a hat and buttons and bannering and being at tables and getting petitions signed, but putting a bumper sticker on my car was like, oh my God, this
Isn't that the
is
funniest?
really,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is the ultimate.
Yeah.
And I was going to get to be with him in person. It was like, how can I go there without a bumper sticker on my car? So that
Right.
was my motivation. But there's something else that I think that we need to clear, which is the anger and the rage, because that also blocks the heart. So not only the terror in the belly, but the anger in the body that
Yes.
shuts off the heart and our access to that.
I totally agree. And you've just given me two things that I'd love to expand on a little bit. And maybe if we do this again, I can go deeper into it. The first is you reminded me of the rest of what I wanted to say about becoming conscious of the fear that's in our belly. The first step is like, what is it that I'm afraid of? But then I call it following the rabbit. And so it's either like going, I'm afraid of putting a sticker on my car. Okay, I acknowledge that because I'm afraid that if I put on a sticker on my car, then I'm afraid that what? And sometimes that may lead me to, oh, I'm afraid they'll smash my windows and I don't have the money to fix them. Or it might lead me to, I'm afraid it will be just like when I was a lightning rod during the pandemic. And it's like, and I'm afraid of being a lightning rod again because I'm afraid of, oh, when I was a kid. And so it takes me on this journey. And so there's getting to know the fear that we're facing like at the surface. And then there's knowing thyself, which is getting really acquainted with like, where does that come from? How does it spider into other things? What is the fear of what that will lead to? Where does it come from? What's the pattern of that? So I completely support and encourage what you said. I actually kind of left it out. So I'm so grateful that you mentioned that. The other
Yeah,
thing
and
I'll
also,
say, you go ahead first.
well, the other thing is for those of us who lived in alcoholic families where we see people who lose their consciousness and the danger that comes with that. So when we're in contact with other people who are caught up in their terror and what that does to us, because whether we're drunk on our emotions or we're drunk on alcohol or whatever's going on with us, it feels less safe to be in conversation with someone
Sure.
where they may become violent and we
Right.
don't know.
Right. And so, yeah, we're hyper vigilant, hyper afraid in a situation where we may not need to be. And that I just know from my background in martial arts and just being in the world, a fear of that can unfortunately draw that kind of energy into being as well. So actually violence becomes the person who's afraid of getting beat up is more likely to get beat up than the person who isn't, to be frank about it. So that's a thing. So it's super important for many levels. I want to speak about anger. I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm going to take 5 minutes to do that as we wrap. This is the most powerful thing that I've ever experienced or created for myself in my own liberation. It's my relationship to anger. And it's a real simple idea. And that is the idea that the only reason a person is ever angry is because something hurts. So anger is a secondary response emotion to the primary response emotion of hurt. So hurt is a kind of fear. I fear or I have hurt And so, and my way of responding to that is to be angry and to try to fight my way to freedoms from this hurt, pain feeling. Okay. Now that's the first step. And so the next thing to understand is the only reason a person ever hurts or really even has fear is because there's something that they love that they feel has been taken from them, or they're afraid is going to be taken from them. So actually, when I'm experiencing anger, I'm in a secondary response to love. I'm actually feeling love. It's backwards and upside down, but it's love. And if I can be present with actually I'm feeling love right now, then there's a transmutation that occurs from that anger that owns me into a love that I am using and utilizing in creation. So I have a very simple process that I use to help me to move from anger to love. And it's just a sentence stem. So I am angry that blank, whatever the thing is. You know, I am angry that this person is raising their voice at me about their candidate when I'm just trying to talk about what I believe in about Bobby. I'm angry that, okay, I'm getting angry that they're being that way because it hurts that. And I don't want to go there. I want to stay in my anger. But if I prompt myself with the sentence, because it hurts that, and if I'm willing to finish that sentence, I'm going to get an answer. It's a little bit vulnerable, but if I do it inside my head or in my journal, it's a little easier because it hurts that they don't like me. I don't even know this person. Why am I? Or because it hurts that they're not connecting with me. It's like my ego doesn't want to think that it matters that some stranger, but that's how the body is. You know, we're all children wanting to be loved by everybody in the world on the inside. And so if I can acknowledge what hurts, it hurts that they don't like me. And then remember what I said, the only reason we have hurt is because there's something that we love. Okay, so let's find out what it is. It hurts that they don't like me, that they're not connected with me because I love being liked by people and being connected. And so now I'm present with what it is that I love, that I was afraid wasn't there. So I was feeling hurt. And because I was hurting, I was angry. But now, because I've taken myself on this journey, now I'm present with that which I love. And the only thing I need to do to be filled with that instead of this is to presence that more. And so the only thing we ever have really a power to do is to move our attention from one thing to another thing. And so it's like there's darkness here, there's a candle there. There's this hurts or I'm angry. And then over here is like, I love being connected. And if I can look at the candle of I love being connected, what I'm going to get is the light of I am connected. I am liked. I am connected. I am liked. My parents like me. They came to the call today. Susan likes me. She's here to support me. Cindy's here to support. Like people like me. I'm feeling better. And then I can see this person again and be like, there's something that they like. They like at least being in conversation with me. And I can see that they right now are actually angry and they're hurt. And they're hurting because of something that they love and that's important to them. And suddenly I see their innocence. And you just like, I think it was Cindy or somebody was saying, like, there's something that matters to this person too. And suddenly I am connected to them in such a way where I am connected. And then I'm experiencing what I talked about at the beginning, where I went from self to other. And so I've eradicated the anger. I've eradicated the hurt. I'm filled with love. I've got courage in my heart. It's sourced from the love that is when there's not fear and my orientation and commitment towards another person. And then we're off to the races. So thank you for bringing anger up. Is there any remaining questions or comments before we end? We've got a couple minutes. I want to end on time. Ethan.
Hey, how's it going? Good
Great,
afternoon,
man.
everybody, or morning, wherever, depending where you are. So I hope you don't mind that I don't use my camera.
It's okay, brother. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I just have just a couple of things to say. At first, I'll talk about my personal journey towards towards Bobby Kennedy getting my vote.
Mhm.
At the beginning, I thought the same thing as like what everybody's been talking about, or at least like the mainstream idea. He's like a fringe radical
Mhm.
who's trying to get Republicans votes, but at the same time, he's also helping the Democrats, and at the same time, he's helping the Republicans.
Mhm.
And it's like every side has their own agenda against him. But anyways, like, but then, I started reading, I started seeing more of him, and I forgot who brought it up. But whoever it was, I did see that exact story of where him and his father would where he talked about him and his father would debate on the debate at the table every night.
Mm.
Um and that really does impact me because personally I haven't lost any family members to it yet. To like my vote and stuff like that. But I can
Mhm.
see how antagonizing and how sort of a smug air about some of my family members are,
Mhm.
especially towards alternative candidates and uh anyone who they don't support. Um and just before I thought, for example, like his position on like, oh, well, I'm being censored, I'm being uh this is all a ploy from the media outlets. I thought, well, he
Mm.
was just being a whining baby about it.
Mhm.
But then, just the recent news now where he's not even going to be able to make it to the presidential debate, which, they like because he didn't get four polls higher than 15% or something, some arbitrary number. And like, uh, they say that he's only in 9 state ballots, which is a bunch of grade A bullshit because like he's already in 23 if you check his website. Um so other than that, and like them moving the post to then now, even though the debate is next week, I think, um like all of that together, I feel like has really made him much more reasonable and rational than I originally thought. And
Mm.
I'll be honest with you, um, a lot of the people here today, I've heard their stories and stuff, and I've heard yours. And I'll be honest with you, I'm probably guessing further to the left than many of you might even believe I am. But I still respect and love every single person who's even coming out to support him because just
Mm.
imagine something like this, something not once any single candidate, just let's look back even 100 years from now. I mean 100 years ago, I mean. Like, could you imagine any single president candidate? I was looking at it today. Any single presidential candidate that would come out from either party, for example, Franklin Roosevelt gaining in the 1936 election more than 500 electoral votes across the whole country. Could you imagine anyone being able to appeal the same way that he could, or the same way that JFK could, or Ronald Reagan, anyone like that, just to a massive base that just that has such loyalty, and not even loyalty because it's not a cult or personality or anything, but just amount of respect, because at the end of the day we are all Americans, and this is and these political institutions that have been created since then really hasn't helped anyone. And
Mm.
for all
Mm.
the people um for all the people that have lost the family members who they uh don't talk to them, or haven't seen them, bunch of like alienation from them. I really do feel sorry about them because I couldn't even imagine doing that myself.
Mm,
So I mean, I I wonder like what could go through someone's head that
yeah,
they would be willing to give all that up just for one candidate. Um, and this is the thing where like it's just become a cesspool of hatred towards one another, and
right,
really no one no one is willing to have the conversations that Bobby Kennedy has, and
yeah,
he is he addresses it, and it's the stuff that I agree with, whether it's uh what do you call it? He called it the child like epidemic illness crisis that we have, the the influence of corporations in politics,
right.
the the destruction of the environment, and all
But
these things.
Ethan, let me jump in, man. I love listening to your heart. And I think you're on the same page as so many of us here with what you're sharing as to why you've kind of been drawn to support Bobby and his candidacy. So I'm just conscious of time. So I want to thank you for that treaty that I
Of
think could
course,
probably continue to go on, man. You've got a lot of yeah, contemplative thought, and I can feel your heart. So thank you so much for sharing. And thank you
of
everybody.
course,
Yeah, you're welcome. And so thank you everybody for being here. This has been very enjoyable for me. I feel supported and connected by being able to share with you and hear from you. We'll see if we can do this again. As by show of hands, would anybody like to do this again? Maybe somewhat regularly? Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, then I'll talk to the people we need to talk to and see if we can get this on the calendar again. Look forward to meeting more of you. And next time, if you see it up, invite people to join us. The more, the merrier. So lots of love to everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Susan. Thanks for everybody. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Love you all.